The colony of Asteron was a quiet place at the edge of human expansion. Built on rocky land beneath a wide-open sky, it was home to families, farmers, miners, and a few scientists. The people there were used to long nights and cold winds, but they were not used to silence. On this particular evening, the silence was so heavy that even the children stopped playing and listened. The air carried no bird calls, no rustling of small animals, and no hum of the usual machines. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath. Rian, the elected leader of the colony, stood on the hill near the watchpost. He was a strong man, not because of his size, but because of the way he never wavered when people looked to him for guidance. From the hill he could see the settlements spread out below, the lamps glowing faintly and the people gathering near their homes. His eyes lifted to the sky, where stars always glimmered bright above Asteron. Yet tonight, one by one, the stars were fading. At first he thought it was clouds, but there were no clouds. The night was clear, and the darkness spreading across. The sky was not natural. Children pointed upward, asking questions. Farmers whispered to each other, unsure what to make of it. Mira, a young mechanic who often worked late in the repair shed, came running toward Rian. Her hands were smudged with oil, her hair tied back, her face pale. "The stars," she said. "They are going out. It's not just us seeing it. Something is covering them." Rian kept his voice calm, though unease filled his chest. "Maybe it is a passing shadow or a storm high in the atmosphere," he replied. "We must not alarm the others until we know more." But even as he spoke, he knew. This was no ordinary storm. By the time half the stars had vanished, the settlers began to gather in the main square. Torches were lit, though there was no wind to trouble their flames. The firelight only seemed to make the dark above deeper. An old teacher named Loren stepped forward and asked the question everyone feared. "Is it safe, Rian? Have we brought something upon us?" The leader raised his hand to steady them. "You are safe," he said firmly. "We have faced storms, shortages, and quakes. We will face this as well. Fear will not help us. Keep close to the lights. Keep watch. I will find the answer." But even as he spoke, Rian noticed the animals penned outside the settlement. They huddled together in silence, their eyes wide and glowing in the dim firelight. Normally, they would stir and cry at night, but now they were frozen, as if waiting for something unseen. That chilled Rian more than the vanishing stars. Animals sensed danger before humans did. Myra tugged at his arm and spoke in a low voice so the crowd could not hear. "This is not a storm. I checked the scanners. There is nothing above us, no dust, no magnetic shift. This darkness is moving. Like a living thing. It spreads, but it is not part of nature." Rian frowned. "Then what is it?" She shook her head. "I don't know, but I do not trust the silence. It feels like we are being watched." The night grew heavier. Only a handful of stars remained now, far at the edge of the sky, like dying embers. The torches flickered and the settlement seemed like a small island in a sea of black. The people tried to comfort one another, but their voices trembled. Children clung to their parents. Farmers who were known for their hard strength kept glancing nervously at the sky. Even the bravest among them felt small under the spreading void. Rian ordered scouts to check the perimeter of the colony. They returned. Quickly, each of them pale, reporting nothing unusual on the ground, but admitting they had felt uneasy as if shadows followed them. One man swore he heard a faint sound like whispering, but when pressed, he could not repeat what he heard. The hours dragged on, though it was impossible to tell how much time passed. Without stars, the night gave no measure. The settlers lit more fires, hoping the light would push back their fear. But the darkness above remained, swallowing all beyond the reach of flame. Myra stood beside Rian once more. Her eyes were sharp, but her hands trembled. "It is not the sky that is gone. Silent," she said quietly. "It is the world itself. Something has taken hold of it." Rian looked at her, and then at the frightened faces of his people. He knew that as their leader he must stand strong. Yet deep inside, he felt the same fear. The stars were not just gone. They had been taken. The silence was not empty. It was waiting. The longest night of their lives had only just begun. The night deepened, and the last few stars were swallowed by the strange darkness. The people of Asteron gathered close around the fires they had lit in the square. The light gave them comfort, but it also showed how pale and tense their faces had become. The silence pressed on them like a weight. Even the youngest children sensed something unnatural. They whispered and pointed to the shadows beyond the firelight, their small voices shaking. Myra sat near the largest torch, her tools still hanging at her belt. She kept looking toward the edges of the colony where the light did not reach. She felt as if the shadows there were not empty. She leaned toward Rian, who stood nearby, keeping watch with the other guards. "Do you feel it?" she asked in a low voice. "Feel what?" Rian replied without turning his head. His eyes scanned the dark horizon. "The watching," Myra said softly. "It is as if eyes are on us. Not from above, not from the sky, but from the ground. From the black." Rian did not answer right away. He wanted to dismiss her fear, but he had felt it too. He had grown up leading people through storms and danger, but this was different. This was not a threat he could see or name. It was the unknown, and the unknown always held the sharpest edge of fear. The minutes stretched into hours. The fires burned steadily, though the wood crackled louder than usual in the silence. Suddenly, one of the scouts at the edge of the square raised his arm. "There," he whispered. Every head turned. Beyond the ring of light, at the far edge of the colony, something moved. It was faint at first, a ripple in the dark mist that now seemed to creep along the ground. The ripple formed a shape tall, thin, almost human, but not quite. Its limbs were too long, its outline too blurred. It did not step forward, but stood as if waiting. A murmur rose among the settlers. Fear spread quickly, and some pulled there. Children close. Rian lifted his hand to keep order. "Hold steady," he said. "It is only a shadow. Do not give in to panic." But before his words could settle, another figure appeared beside the first. Then another. Within moments, a line of strange silhouettes stood in the darkness, all silent, all unmoving, all facing the colony. Their hollow shapes seemed to drink in the light, making the fires feel weaker. "They are not animals," whispered Laren, the old teacher. "No beast stands still like that. They are something else." Myra felt her heart pound. She gripped a tool at her belt, though she knew it would be useless. "They are not shadows," she said. "They are choosing to be seen. They want us to know they are there." The settlers tried to stay calm, but fear was a living thing among them now. Some of the braver men raised rifles, though the flickering flames showed no solid target. The figures did not move closer. They only stood in silence, their presence heavier than any storm. Suddenly, a faint sound drifted on the air. It was soft, like a whisper, yet it carried across the entire square. Nobody could understand the words, if they were words at all. The sound was thin, broken, like the wind passing through hollow wood. Children began to cry. One woman covered her ears, shaking. "What do they want?" Someone shouted. Rian forced his voice to remain firm. "They want us afraid," he said. "Do not give it to them." He stepped toward the edge of the firelight, raising a torch high. "If you want us, then come forward," he called to the shapes. His voice echoed strong, though inside he felt the same cold as the others. The shapes did not move. The whispers continued soft and endless, like a current in the night. Then, as if answering Rian's challenge, one of the tall figures shifted closer. Its steps were slow and soundless. The flames bent slightly as it neared, though no wind stirred. Its form was clearer, now pale skin stretched thin, empty hollows where eyes should be. But still it did not cross into the circle of light. The settlers gasped, many stepping back. But Rian held his ground. "Stay in the light," he ordered. "Do not break the circle." The figure halted, then slowly withdrew, fading back into the mist. The others followed, vanishing like smoke into the black. The whispers grew faint until there was only silence again. For a long time, no one moved. Then Myra spoke, her voice steady though her face was pale. "Light holds them back. Did you see it? They fear the fire. It pushes them away." Her words gave the people a thread of hope. Quickly they built more torches, adding fuel to every flame. The fires grew taller, brighter, their light reaching farther into the dark. The settlers gathered close around them, clinging to the thought that light was a shield. But even as hope flickered, unease remained. The humanoid figures had not attacked, not yet. They had only come to watch, to whisper, to test the edges of human courage. It was as if the night itself had a mind, and it was studying them. Rian looked at his people, then at Mira. He saw the fear in their eyes, but also the strength. They had survived many dangers before. Yet deep inside, he wondered if this time would be different. The night felt endless, and the shadows beyond the firelight were waiting. The first signs had appeared. The terror had only begun. The flames of the colony burned bright through the strange night. Torches and bonfires were placed across the square, along the fences, and even on rooftops. The light pushed back the mist for a time, but the fear inside the people of Astron did not fade. They could not forget the shapes they had seen, standing and watching in silence. The whispers still echoed in their minds, as if those voices had left a mark that no fire could erase. Rian walked among the settlers, speaking calm. Words, checking the defenses, and making sure the fires did not burn out. His strong voice helped the people steady their nerves, but even he felt the same heaviness in his chest. He knew something worse was waiting beyond the flames. He could almost feel it moving closer. Near the edge of the settlement, Mira worked, with two others, to fix one of the broken lamps. Her hands were quick, though her eyes kept flicking toward the mist. She whispered to herself, testing wires and switches, but she could not stop glancing at the dark, certain it was listening. Laren, the old teacher, came to her side. His wrinkled face was pale in the firelight. "Do you believe they will return?" he asked softly. Myra tightened a screw before answering. "They will. They are not gone. They are waiting. And when they come back, they will test us again." Before Laren could reply, a cry rang out from the other side of the square. Everyone turned at once. A family near the barn was shouting. Their young boy was missing. His mother ran in circles, calling his name again and again. The father pointed toward the mist, swearing he had seen a small shadow slip away. The settlers rushed to search, torches raised high. They scoured the barns, the pens, and the empty huts, but the boy was gone. No footprints marked the ground. No sound guided them. He had vanished as if swallowed by the night itself. Fear spread faster than fire. Mothers clutched their children. Men tightened their grips on tools and weapons. The missing boy's cries echoed in every heart. Some settlers whispered that the shadows had taken him. Others begged Rian to send everyone inside, to lock the doors and wait. But Rian knew doors and walls would not protect them. He raised his torch and spoke firmly. "Do not scatter. Stay in the light. Stay together. Alone we are weak, but together we stand strong." His words steadied some, but many still trembled. The boy's absence left a wound in their courage. The Night dragged on, heavy and endless. Then, as if to deepen their fear, another person was lost. This time, it was one of the guards. He had been standing watch near the fence when someone noticed his torch lying on the ground, still burning. His place was empty. No one had seen him leave. No one had heard a sound. One moment he was there. The next he was gone. The settlers began to murmur. "They are taking us," someone said, "one by one, like a hand picking pieces from a board." Mira bent close to Rian. The light keeps them back, but it is not enough. They wait for shadows, for weakness, for moments when someone strays. Too far. We must stay tighter, closer, or they will keep vanishing. Rian nodded. He ordered the settlers to move all torches into a tight circle, gathering everyone in the square. It was crowded and tense, but at least the circle of fire gave them a sense of safety. Parents kept their children close. The guards formed a wall of bodies at the edges. Every eye stayed fixed on the dark mist, just beyond the firelight. For a time, the silence held. The fires crackled. The people breathed in rhythm. Then the whispers returned, faint and endless, brushing against the edge of hearing. They were not words, but they carried meaning all the same. Fear. That was what the whispers spread. Fear that filled the chest and tightened the throat. Some settlers covered their ears, but the sound seemed to come from inside their minds. Suddenly, a torch sputtered and went out. Gasps filled the square. In that instant of darkness, one of the guards standing nearby vanished. When they lit the torch again, his place was empty. Only his weapon remained, lying in the dust. The settlers broke into shouts. Some begged to flee. Others dropped to their knees, praying. The circle nearly broke apart, but Rian's voice thundered above them all. "Do not run. Do not leave the light. That is what they want. Hold your ground." His words pulled them back from panic, but terror still ruled their eyes. Mira stepped forward then, raising her own lamp high. "Listen to me," she said. "They are not all powerful. They avoid the fire. They fear it. If we hold together, if we keep the flames alive, they cannot take us all. They will try to break us apart, but we must not give them the chance." Her voice, though not as strong as Rian's, carried a different strength hope. The settlers clung to it. They pressed closer, adding fuel to every flame, feeding the circle of light as if it were life itself. Still, the truth was clear. The night was not just long. It was hungry. And it had already taken 3 of their own dot as the whispers rose again. The people of Asteron understood that survival would not be easy. The darkness would not stop. It would keep reaching, keep pulling, until either the fires died or their courage broke. The vanishing had begun, and the longest night was far from over. The fires of Asteron burned brighter than ever. Every torch, every lamp, every pile of wood that could be set alight was gathered into a great ring around the settlers. The square had become a fortress of flame. Smoke curled upward into the endless. Dark, and sparks leapt high like desperate stars. The people clung to the light, for they had seen what waited in the mist. Shadows took those who strayed. Silence swallowed those who wandered. Fire was the only shield they had left. Rian stood at the center of the square, watching as families huddled together. The children slept restlessly, their small hands clutching at their parents' arms. The older settlers whispered about the missing ones, the boy, the guard, the others. Their voices were low, yet the fear in them was heavy. Rian felt that same fear pressing on his chest, but he did not let it show. He knew the people needed his strength more than ever. Mira moved from fire to fire, making sure each one burned hot. Her face glowed in the light, but her eyes were sharp and restless. She kept glancing toward the edges of the flames, where the mist swirled thickest. It seemed to pulse as though it were alive. She muttered to herself, counting how much fuel remained. They had wood for a few hours, maybe longer if they rationed carefully, but the night was not passing. No dawn had come. Time itself seemed caught in the darkness. Laren, the old teacher, joined her by one of the fires. "I have seen many storms," he said quietly, "but this night is not like any storm. It has no rhythm, no breath. It stretches without end. If it does not end, what will we do when the wood is gone?" Mira did not look at him. She tightened the fire pit with more stones, as if building a wall. "We will make the flames last," she said. "We must." A sudden sound cut through the stillness. The settlers froze. From the mist came a sharp crack, like branches snapping. Then another, then silence. All eyes fixed on the dark beyond the flames. Slowly figures began to appear. Tall, thin shapes, dozens of them, standing in rows. They did not move forward, but their pale forms glowed faintly in the dark mist. Their hollow faces reflected the firelight in strange ways, making them seem less like beings and more like reflections of fear itself. The settlers gasped. Some pressed closer to the fires. Others raised weapons, though they knew they would not help. The humanoids stood without speaking, without stepping, only watching. The firelight flickered against them, and each time the flames bent low, the shadows seemed closer. Rian lifted his torch high. "We are not afraid of you," he said, his voice steady and strong. "You cannot cross our light." The creatures gave no answer. Instead, a low sound rose in the mist. It was not the thin whisper of before, but a deeper hum, almost like chanting. The settlers covered their ears, but the sound seeped into their bones. It made their hearts beat faster, their throats dry, their hands shake. Fear spread again, not from what they saw, but from what they felt. One of the settlers cried out, dropping his torch in panic. The flames sputtered low. At once, a shadow moved, darting closer. The others shouted, rushing to relight the torch. And the creature stopped just at the edge of light, frozen as if bound by it. "They fear it," Myra said sharply. "Did you see? They fear the fire." Her words steadied the people for a moment, but Rian saw the truth in her face. Fire kept them safe. Yes, but fire also burned down. Wood was not endless. Their shield was strong, but it was fragile. The hours dragged on, though the settlers could no longer tell if it was night or day. The mist never lifted. The fires burned lower with each passing hour, and the people grew weary. Some wanted to sleep, but no one dared. They feared closing their eyes. They feared waking to find another gone. Myra kept working, building small devices to spark brighter flames. She used power cells from the broken lamps, wiring them into crude lights. When one of them flashed strong, the creatures nearest to it stumbled back. Hope stirred again. The settlers cheered quietly, clinging to this new idea. But the mist was patient. It pressed closer, bending around the edges of the flames. The figures within it multiplied, filling the horizon. They never rushed, never shouted. They only stood, waiting, feeding on human fear. Lauren whispered to Rian, "They will not strike as beasts do. They strike as the night does, slow and endless. They will wait until the fires die." Rian gripped his torch tighter. "Then we will not let them die." And so the settlers of Astron fought the night with fire and fear. The flames roared, and the shadows stepped back. But every spark carried a price, and every log burned away their strength. They had found the weakness of their enemy, but their enemy had also found theirs. The people prayed for dawn, but no light rose in the sky. Only smoke, mist, and endless dark surrounded them. The fire burned on, their only wall against the terror. That watched Dot, and the longest night stretched on, merciless and unbroken. The fires of Asteron burned lower as the endless night stretched on. The settlers fed the flames with every scrap of wood they could find. Broken carts, empty barrels, even furniture from their homes. Smoke filled the square, and sparks floated upward like tiny stars. But still, the mist pressed close, and the humanoid figures waited in the shadows. Rian walked a circle, his torch lifted high. He spoke to the people, urging them not to despair, yet in his heart he knew the truth. The wood was running out. Fire had saved them until now, but when the last flame burned away, nothing would stand between them and the creatures. Mira worked near the old generator shed. Her hands moved quickly, wires and tools scattered around her. Sweat ran down her face, but her eyes shone with determination. She was not ready to surrender. She believed there had to be another way, another weapon against the darkness. Laren. The old teacher came to her side. "You have not rested," he said. "You will collapse if you go on like this." Myra shook her head. "I cannot rest. The fires will not last. I must find something stronger than wood, something that burns brighter. The shadows do not fear the heat, they fear the light. If I can make more light, stronger light, maybe we can drive them back." She opened the power cells they had taken from the broken lamps. Carefully, she wired them together, shaping them into a small device. When she connected the last wire, the cell sparked and a beam of light burst out. It was not like firelight, it was sharper, whiter, brighter. For a moment, it cut through the mist like a blade. The settlers gasped. The nearest humanoid shapes staggered backward, their pale forms trembling. The whispers that had haunted the night grew louder, almost pained, as if the creatures could not bear the beam. Rian rushed over. His eyes widened at the sight. "You did this?" Mira nodded, holding the device steady though her arms shook. "It works. Look at them. They cannot stand it." The people cheered softly, their fear lifting for the first time in hours. They crowded around, watching as Mira turned the beam toward the shadows. The humanoids bent away from it, retreating into the mist. For the first time, the settlers saw their enemy falter, but the victory was brief. The light sputtered, flickered, and then faded. The power cell was drained. Darkness rushed back and the shadows crept closer once more. The cheers died, replaced by groans of despair. Mira lowered the device, her face tight. "The power is not enough. These cells are too small. They cannot hold the energy we need." Rian placed a hand on her shoulder. "But you proved something important. Fire is not our only shield. Light itself is their weakness." Her eyes lit with determination. "If we can connect the generator, if we can build stronger lamps, maybe we can cover the whole square. Maybe even push them back." The settlers listened with hope. For hours they had believed their end was near, but now they clung to this discovery. They gathered what scraps of metal and wires they could find. Some worked with Myra, others kept the fires burning, and the rest stood guard. Fear still lived in them, but now it was joined by purpose. The humanoids did not vanish. They lingered, at the edge of the mist, watching, their hollow faces tilted as if studying the humans. When the settlers worked together, the whispers rose higher, almost angry. It was as if the creatures knew their secret had been discovered. Suddenly, a ripple passed through the mist. One of the pale figures stepped forward, closer than before. Its hollow eyes glowed faintly, its thin arms stretching toward the firelight. The settlers gasped, ready to run, but Rian shouted, "Hold the line! Do not break the circle!" The figure stopped just beyond the flames, testing the edge of the light. Its body trembled, as though fighting against an unseen force. Then it stepped back, vanishing once more into the black. "They are not all-powerful," Rian said loudly, his voice carrying through the square. "They have a weakness, and we have found it. Light drives them away. Fire protects us, but brighter light can defeat them. We will endure this night. Together. His words steadied the people. Even the children, though tired and afraid, lifted their heads with new courage. They were no longer only running from the darkness. They were fighting it. Mira worked until her hands ached, building a second beam from the last of the cells. When she lit it, the shadows scattered once more. The settlers clapped, their voices rising with hope. But again the beam faded too soon. It was not enough. They needed more. Power. As the fires burned lower, the truth became clear. The discovery of the weakness had given them hope, but it also made their danger sharper. The creatures would not wait forever. They would press harder, closer, stronger. And if the settlers could not build brighter light before the flames died, the weakness they had found would mean nothing. The mist thickened, as if sensing the humans' fragile strength. The whispers rose again, carrying fear on the air. But now the settlers had something to fight for. They had seen the shadows recoil. They had seen that courage and light could stand against the night. The weakness was real. It was both there. Hope and their burden. The longest night was not yet over, but for the first time, the people of Asteron believed it could be survived. The fires of Asteron burned low. The settlers had broken apart almost everything they owned to keep the flames alive: tables, fences, even doors. The square glowed with a weak circle of fire, but the mist pressed closer with every passing moment. The people huddled together, their eyes wide, their bodies trembling from exhaustion. No one had slept. No one dared to close their eyes. Rian stood at the front, his torch lifted high. His face was pale from weariness, but his voice still carried strength. "Hold on," he said firmly. "We have lasted this long. We will last. Longer still. Do not break the circle." The settlers clung to his words, but their fear was heavy. They remembered the vanished boy, the missing guard, the strange whispers. They knew the fire was fading. It was only a matter of time before the night tried to take them again. Myra worked by the old generator with a group of settlers. Her tools clattered as she tried to piece together stronger lights. She had proven the beams of white light could drive the creatures back, but the small power cells burned out too quickly. Now she fought to connect the generator, hoping it could bring more strength. Her fingers shook from tiredness, but her mind burned with determination. Laren. The old teacher stood nearby, handing her wires and bolts. "You're keeping them alive," he said. "Not just with fire, but with hope. Do not let that hope fade." Myra nodded, but did not stop working. "If this fails, the fires will not save us much longer. I must finish before it is too late." As she spoke, a sound rose from the mist. It was the whisper again, but louder, heavier, as if 1,000 hollow voices spoke at once. The settlers clutched their ears, but the sound was inside their heads. Fear spread through them like cold water. Some dropped to their knees. Others clung to one another, shaking. Out of the mist, shapes appeared more than before. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Tall, thin figures with hollow eyes and pale skin stretched tight over their forms. They surrounded the colony in a great circle, unmoving, watching. Their silence was worse than a scream. The settlers gasped in terror. A woman cried out, "There are too many. We cannot stand against them." Rian raised his voice above the cries. "Listen to me. They cannot cross the fire. They cannot stand the light. As long as we hold, we are safe. Do not give them your fear." But the creatures stepped closer. The mist thickened, and the fire bent low, its light struggling to reach the edge. One of the settlers panicked and tried to run, but Rian caught his arm. "Stay. If you leave the circle, you are lost." The man shook with fear, but stayed close. Myra finally connected 2 wires, and the generator gave a deep hum. A crude lamp sparked to life, spilling out a harsh white beam. The light cut through the mist, and the nearest creatures stumbled back, with hissing sounds that were almost words. The settlers cheered weakly, clutching at this new hope, but the generator sputtered. The lamp flickered. The power was unstable. Mira gritted her teeth, forcing the wires tighter. "Come on," she whispered. "Stay alive. Stay bright." The beam steadied, and the creatures held back once more. Yet they did not retreat. They circled, waiting, pressing against the edge of courage itself. Hour after hour passed, though. No dawn came. The people fought with fire, with lamps, with every scrap of strength left in their bodies. They fed the flames, they held the beams, and they stood shoulder to shoulder. The creatures tested them again and again, stepping closer, reaching long hands toward the light, only to recoil. The whispers rose and fell, trying to break their minds. But still the settlers held. Children cried, but their parents whispered. Comfort. Men and women who had never fought before stood like soldiers beside Rian. Fear shook them, but courage bound them. The humanoids could not take that from them. At one moment, the generator flickered out. Darkness rushed forward, and shadows leapt near. But Rian lifted his torch high, shouting, "We do not yield." The people shouted with him, their voices loud enough to shake the mist. Mira struck the generator hard, and the lamp flared back to life. The creatures staggered away once more. Something changed then. The settlers realized the truth. The creatures fed on fear. Every time they cried, every time they broke, the shadows grew stronger. But when they stood firm, when they shouted together, the creatures faltered. Fear gave them power. Courage pushed them back. Rian saw it clearly. He turned to his people and raised his voice. "Do you see? They are nothing without our fear. Stand strong, and they cannot touch us. This night is long, but we are longer still." The settlers straightened, their trembling eased. They gripped torches, held lamps, and shouted back into the mist. The creatures hesitated, their hollow faces shifting as if confused. The whispers tried again, but the people answered with their own voices, songs, chants, cries of defiance. Each word of courage weakened the darkness. Each spark of fire burned brighter. The night raged on, endless and merciless. But the people of Asteron did not break. They endured with fire, with light, with courage, and with each other. It was the longest night they had ever faced. Yet within that night, they discovered their greatest weapon. Not fire, not machines, but the strength of their own will. The creatures had thought fear would consume them. Instead, defiance kept them alive. And so the settlers of Asteron fought on, waiting for a dawn that still refused to come. The mist was still heavy, the shadows still close, but the settlers of Asteron had stopped trembling. Their fear had turned into something new: defiance. The night had stretched far beyond what any clock could measure, yet they stood as one. They no longer felt like a broken colony waiting for rescue. They felt like a wall of fire, alive with courage. Rian stood at the front, his torch nearly burned to its end. He lifted it high anyway, his arm steady, his voice cut through the endless whispers of the humanoids. "You will not take this place. You will not take us." The settlers shouted with him. Their cries echoed across the ruined streets, louder than the hollow voices in the mist. The humanoids moved uneasily, their pale faces turning from side to side as if searching for weakness, but finding none. Mira was still bent over the generator. Sweat ran down her face, and her hands were black with oil and dust. She adjusted the wires once more, then kicked the metal frame. With a sputter and a roar, the machine steadied. All the lamps flared at once, beams of bright light cutting through the fog. The settlers gasped as the mist thinned under the glow. The creatures shrieked in a way they had not before. Their tall bodies twisted, their long fingers clawed at the air. Some staggered backward. Others turned and melted deeper into the mist. For the first time, the The settlers saw them break. Laren, the old teacher, placed a hand on Myra's shoulder. "You have given them light, but more than that, you have given them belief. They see we can fight." Myra nodded, but her eyes stayed sharp on the generator. "This machine will not hold forever. We must be ready for more." As if to answer her, the mist surged again. A great wave of shadow poured forward, thicker and darker than ever. Shapes moved inside it, larger than before, towering figures that bent the mist with their size. The settlers gasped, their courage trembling for a moment, but Rian did not let fear take root. He raised his arm and shouted, "Stand together!" His voice was firm, like steel. "They cannot break us unless we break ourselves." The people lifted their torches and held hands. Side by side, they formed a ring of light around the fire and the generator lamps. Children stood with parents, neighbors with neighbors. They were not soldiers, but in that moment, they felt like an army. The wave of shadow crashed forward. The light struck it. For a moment, darkness and brightness warred in the air. The humanoids screamed, a sound of anger and hunger. Their whispers turned into one great roar, but the settlers shouted. "Louder! Hold!" Rian cried. "Hold!" The people shouted with him, their voices a wall. Songs rose, old earth songs of home, of hope, of life. The sound carried into the mist, strong and steady. The darkness shivered under it. The tall figures staggered, their hollow eyes flickering like dying flames. Then, in the far distance, something changed. The mist shifted color. The deep gray softened. A thin line of pale gold appeared on the horizon. Someone gasped, pointing. The sun. It was faint at first, almost hidden, but the settlers saw it. A glow rising, breaking through the endless night. Hope surged like fire in their chests. The humanoids shrieked louder. They swayed, they stumbled, they fell back as the golden light spread across the sky. The settlers lifted their voices higher, welcoming the dawn. The fire no longer mattered, nor the generator. The true light was returning. The first rays touched the square. The mist burned away like smoke. The tall figures screamed and dissolved, their bodies unraveling into nothingness. The smaller shadows scattered, fleeing toward the far hills, but the sunlight chased them down. Within moments, the colony was clear. The sky was open, blue and bright, as if the night had never been. The settlers stood in silence, staring at the sun as it rose. Tears fell, not from fear but from relief. They had survived the longest night. Rian lowered his torch at last. The wood was only a black stick now. He looked at his people and spoke softly, yet every ear heard him. The night thought it could break us, but we learned the truth. It was never the fire or the light alone that saved us. It was us. We are stronger than fear. We are stronger than darkness. Mira sank to the ground, exhausted, but a small smile touched her face. We faced what should have ended us, and we are still here. Laren raised his hands toward the sky. Remember this day. The night may come again, but we will never face it as the same people. We are changed. We are ready. The settlers gathered in the square, some hugging, some laughing through tears. Children ran in the sunlight, their cries bright with joy. The colony was scarred, the buildings broken, but their spirit was whole. They began to rebuild that very day. Together, they set up stronger lamps, stronger walls, and stronger hearts. They knew the creatures might return, that the mist might rise again, but fear no longer ruled them. They carried a new strength inside, for when the longest night had come, they had not fallen. They had risen, and from that day forward, the people of Asteron were no longer a frightened colony at the edge of space. They were a beacon. They were human. They were unbroken,